Welcome to the Bad Roman Podcast. On this show, we talk with veterans, community leaders, Christians and non-Christians as we explore the entanglement of Christians with the state. The Bad Roman Project was created out of the firm belief that as Christians, we are called to follow Christ, not the state. Here is your host, Craig Hargis.
Hey folks, today I have Scott Goldman on the show. He recently wrote an article called Come Be a Bad Roman for our website at thebadroman.com. And so I wanted to have him on to talk more about this article because the whole goal behind our project is the entanglement of the Christian with the state and how we seem to be so engaged with the state as Christians where we're called to follow Christ. And his article is excellent and shows exactly what a bad Roman is supposed to look like. And being a bad Roman is not a bad thing. It's actually being more Christ-like.
Right. Would rather serve God than serve Caesar, you feel me? Right. I'm just trying to live what he said. I'm just trying to live what he said. I ain't scared. I will take one to the head. Go ahead. So it's safe to say that I'm bad. So it's safe to say that I'm bad. So it's safe to say that I'm bad.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Got a day off work, enjoying a cup of coffee, wrestling with my cat. She's way too involved with all this. She's now trying to knock my phone off the desk. But I was telling Abby this when we recorded last time, that one thing that you guys don't see while you guys are talking to me, I'm listening to you, but I'm also having to pick Cubby up and put her back on the ground. And then that turns into a fight. We start wrestling. And so I'm wrestling with this cat while I'm talking to you guys. And you guys don't, I wish there was some video of this because it would be pretty hilarious. But if I sound like I'm stuttering, I'm probably trying to get her off of my arm because she likes to wrestle and she turns into there she goes again. She's got a hold of my hand right now.
That's actually awesome because I have a dog and my fear is that he's going to just start going bark crazy when somebody walks by the front of the house while we're on a podcast.
I've recorded with people in the past and I can hear their dogs in the background. I think it's great. It just kind of shows our humanity a little bit, that what we got going on in our personal lives with our animals. They're like little kids anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it just shows that we're real people. We're not here for a show. We're actually concerned with reality.
So in your article, it's called Come Be a Bad Roman. And you start off, a good Christian is a bad Roman. Allow me to explain in a simple, fundamental way. Words have meanings. The original meaning of the word Christian just meant little Christ. That's it. No more, no less. And what I love about this is as you grow in your understanding of the teachings of Christ, you start to understand that his teachings are completely contradictory to what we see in the world and what you see as how Christians are relating themselves to the state, how they get engaged with the state, how they entangle themselves with the state. And we are not called to be part of that. I was speaking with my dad. He called me on my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about that he's a Church of Christ preacher. And he told me, he said that we're not supposed to be entangled with the world. And I told him, I said, this includes politics. And he said, he goes, and you're right. He said, I've thought about that a lot. And it includes government. It includes anything with this world. We're supposed to just follow Christ. Our goal is to live a Christ-like life. And to be more of a Christian, it's impossible to engage with the state and still follow Christ, in my opinion. And I think that the further we've gone with this project, people are starting to realize that as well. It's been very refreshing to me that the feedback we get from people as far as this project's concerned, because they're opening up to it a little bit more day by day. And I love it. And I hope we continue to grow that way.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And one of the ways I've been thinking about it since writing this article is I'm not the most computer savvy guy, but I understand what an operating system is and how that operating system helps you get somewhere, so to speak. And that's basically how I can relate being a good Christian I'll just say a good Roman. Like those are the contrasts. Those are the things. Those are going to be the operating systems that's going to produce something out in the world. And I think that's where Christ really separates himself from the world. Is the world operates? Well, the slogan was Pax Roma, which I believe means peace through victory. Roman peace through victory or something like that. I can't remember it right off the top of my head because it's been a while since I've wrote the article. But it was basically bringing peace to the world by violence. And Christ's operating system was, I give you peace not as the world gives it to you, like through internally, and by trusting in him and trusting in, early Christianity was called the way. And it would basically be understood as this is the way you behave and the way you act and the way you engage the world. So the question that it's really, really asking is Caesar's way right in the world, or is Jesus's way right in the world?
Right. And in your article, when you mentioned Pax Romana or Roman peace, you said the Romans brought peace by the sword, known more accurately as military might, but let's call it what it was. It was oppression. Rome was a kingdom. And if you get back to what Jesus said, he said something that was brilliant. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom was of this world, then my followers would fight. They would fight to defend him. And if you see the way the church follows, not a lot of Christians believe the same way that the majority of Christians do as far as the war footing that the United States government is on. But the majority do. Going back to my old neocon days, I fully thought the only way we were going to bring peace was to kill a bunch of people, which looking back makes absolutely no sense. How are you going to bring peace by starting more wars? Jesus did not come as some war hero. He came very meek. He was very mild, and he just promoted peace. That was his goal.
Yeah, and I think that's a clear example when you just read the story, but it's gotten twisted in our Christian belief that Jesus is that warrior that's going to come back and destroy the world that way. This was just the first visit was just a Mr. Nice Guy, and the next time we're going to get Mr. Bad Guy. And I just don't think that's scripturally accurate. The more that we're coming to understand the ancient languages, it's starting to reveal itself that that's not the point. It's not that there's going to be a hostile takeover. But we read that, we've actually put that spirit into the scriptures. We haven't really got it out of the scriptures, in my opinion.
How can we expect somebody to see a Christ-like nature if we are actively dropping bombs on their country or occupying their country? When Christians call us a Christian nation, which is absurd because there's nothing Christ-like about our nation. But if you're calling us a Christian nation, and then people in other countries are seeing how our, air quotes, Christian nation is acting in their own country, they're not seeing the love of Christ. How can you portray Christ as peaceful and loving when you are actively killing their family? It's so contradictory. And I understand, I support troops. I support them to the point that I want them home and get out all that garbage. That's how much I support them. We cannot support troops by sending them overseas to destroy other countries.
I was going to say, I just very much agree with that. And the part that breaks my heart in it is when you really step back and observe why we're in other countries, we're fed propaganda that, they hate us for our freedoms. I'll just use that one because that's the one I bought into and believed for many, many years. But the reality is we're attacking them and not letting them just be them. And if we were in their shoes, we would be doing the same thing. We would be trying to defend ourselves, but we're labeling them terrorists. And then when I start reading things in American history, how we were looked at as terrorists to the English Empire, well, I mean, we're calling the kettle black. We're being very hypocritical.
Right. And in your article, you said Caesar's words and ways of being were to be followed by the greatest to the lowest of people in his lands. They were all his citizens, and they were all intended to be good Romans. And the way to be a good Roman was one of might makes right. It was believed and is still believed by many today as the way peace is brought to the world. Violence, or at the very least, the threat of it, is an acceptable means to an end. The good Roman, might makes right way of being in the world, abided by a dominance hierarchy that diminished the dignity of all of those who opposed this way. But there was a new kingdom emerging. And this was great, dude. I love how you brought this into the article when you talked about Jesus. I mean, but there was a new kingdom emerging. There was a little-known Jewish rabbi by the name of Jesus of Nazareth began to challenge the Roman way of being in the world in the first century. And something that we talked about, I don't remember if it was you or John that brought it up in our first roundtable, I think it was John, but he said something great. He said, if our own government doesn't view the church as some sort of threat, then we as Christians are not doing our job. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. And I think there's so much truth behind that, because they don't really have to oppress Christians in America, because the majority of Christians are going right along with whatever the government does, as long as their guy's in office, their favorite guy.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there's a spirit behind it. It's a religious spirit, I would say, that you follow the leader. And unfortunately, what I see in modern Christianity right now, it's really Christless in some aspects, where they don't want to follow the way of Christ. They just want to be called by his name, so to speak. But that's not how it's understood in the ancient world. And you see it all the time in humanity. It's not just a religious phenomenon, but like if you look at conservatives and liberals and you break down those words and what they mean, you find out that liberals are really not that liberal. They want to be controlling. And that's the opposite. And conservatives, they're not being very conservative because they want control and not let go either, which costs a lot of energy and and resources. So it's like these labels get put on, and then they don't get held to. And in a sense, that's kind of what idolatry is. Like I think about the Pledge of Allegiance. I said it for years. I still have it memorized. I don't think it'll ever leave my head, but it's left my heart. The reason is because it says, we stand for liberty and justice for all. But if we look at the reality of America, no, it's not. We don't have justice for all. We have justice for those who can afford it. We have liberty for those who can afford it. It's not truth. So that's no different than, say, ancient biblical idolatry, where they built a statue to say, this is your God, this is your Moloch that we're going to sacrifice our children to, because if we sacrifice to you, we're going to get this blessing. It's the object in the way of the real, so to speak. Like I like to use money as an object of idolatry as well, because it's something that's the focus on it can really pollute our thinking. Like if I have $20 and I want to get my money's worth, of groceries, the value is really on the groceries, not on the dollar. The dollar is, in a sense, the myth or the even middleman that somebody believes has the real potential to power in it to get that. But that's not true. That dude can just hand me vegetables and I could work on his car. You know what I'm saying? The money is not really the focus at all, but we make it the focus. So that's kind of how I've idolatrized. I don't even think that's a word, but that's kind of one of our operating mechanisms that I don't think we fully understand.
Right, and I apologize if I'm all over the place here, but you said something that got me to thinking. With everything going on with this coronavirus thing, when you look at the left, they talk a lot about helping, individual rights. But with everything going on right now, I've noticed a very common trend among the left is that they are more interested in controlling people. And I see it just in conversations with people. And then on the right, this is one thing that's really frustrating me, because I came from the right. A lot of us came from the right. But you see people on the right, they are so upset with how the government is handling things. But then in the same breath, they will come back and say, but we have to reelect these guys. Otherwise, the Democrats will take over, which some of these terms that these people come up with just crack me up. But Democrats or libtards or stuff like that, and then the left has their names for the right. And so they're just fighting back and forth. But when you boil it down, both sides are not really interested in individual liberty, individual rights. Neither one are concerned with that. The right talks a good game, but they don't follow it. The left, they're actually more honest than the right. When you get down to it, they are actually more honest about how they feel about individuals or how they feel about liberty. At least I can say that about the left. I can't say that about the right. The right talks a lot about liberty, religious liberty in itself, but the left is very honest about it. And kudos to them. At least we know they're not lying about it when they come at us with their force of control. The right does it kind of they kind of do it behind the scenes with their control.
I would agree with you 100% on that. And I would kind of even tie that back to idolatry, where they want a certain image upheld, but the reality is They don't want you to be free. I think about the slogan that we're told, stay home, save lives. It's really no different than the right's propaganda of support the troops. What they mean by saying each one of those lines, whether you're on the left or the right, is don't question what we tell you, because if you question what we tell you, you want people to die. And that's the truth on both sides. It's the same operating system. And that's why it drives me crazy that Christians will jump on political means, and there's Christians on the right and on the left. And they will jump on these slogans and take up these idolatrous kind of terms that have no real meaning except to control you by words.
It's so frustrating. I had a friend, she got so mad at me when all this started because we never really, we had some similar ideas as far as politics in the past, but she comes from a more socialist background. So there were a lot of conflicts when I was a neocon. But the more I learned about libertarianism, we kind of came together on some things. But when all this started, I don't remember what she posted, but I commented, I said, it's crazy. I said, I have to carry papers in my truck to show that I'm an essential employee in case I get pulled over. I said, that's not free. And it's reminiscent of Nazi Germany. And it upset her. And then she's like, she goes, I think that this project is going to be good for you because it's going to give you an outlet. But she goes, I won't ever listen to it because we won't agree. She goes, I believe in transgender rights. And I was like, that's awesome. I said, I believe in everybody's rights, every individual rights. I don't care if you're transgender. That's between you and God. That's none of my business. They try to single out certain aspects of the community. Well, I support these people's rights. I do too. And I also support the other person's rights that you're disagreeing with. We're all individuals. I cannot stand this collective mentality because it really causes more problems than if we just focused on individuals as an individual person. A lot of times race is brought up. Race divides people probably more than anything as far as the subject matter behind it. And I'm all the time, it's like I said, you're right. I said, but we need to focus on the individual. If we stop focusing on the color of a person's skin and just looked at that person as a person, an individual, and not try to categorize them into a certain group of people. We're all individuals and we all live our own lives the best we know how.
Agreed. And one of the things I see by looking more into the first century church that followed Christ is they were trying to usher in a new humanity. No difference between Jew and Greek. That is a huge wall to break down for a Jewish person during that time frame. Probably same for a Roman or an Ethiopian, but and male and female, bond servant and free. There's all those things that are listed that they're bringing on the same level. That they're tearing down hierarchy. Is what the first century church was doing, and they weren't doing it just by saying it. They were doing it by loving their neighbor as themselves, which is what Christ was teaching. It's like, don't think better of yourself. Like the word, even humility. I had my pastor do a decent sermon on it where it doesn't mean that you're lower than anybody. It means it's an even playing field. So like you've heard the term false humility is when you're I'll pick on some theology here on the Reformed side is the worm theology. You're not good enough. Well, maybe I'm not good enough. I'll just play along for a second. But I'm so not good enough that the God of the universe would put on a skin suit and die for me. I think I have some value to him. So you can't, in my opinion, you can't live in this negativity that, I'm always bad and good. And honestly, dude, I've lived most of my Christian walk that way. Like I always was seeking approval. But what I'm seeing, and I had another pastor point this out to me, if you look at Christ when he gets baptized by John the Baptist and he comes out of the water and it says, "This is my son." Jesus didn't do anything yet. It was just his being. That's what God was happy with. And sure, you can add on a ton to that. You can add to the text, well, God knew that Jesus was going to be perfect and blah, blah, blah. And sure, I don't have any disagreements with that whatsoever. But to read the story and to learn from what the story is telling you in its context, that's a huge point. God, I believe, is already happy with us and already loving us. So in a sense, like, I don't believe at all that when I strive so hard to love my neighbor as myself, that God is more happy with me than when I'm failing at it. And I find that perspective that I know God is happy with me regardless, and that I'm his son and his child. made in his image and in his likeness, that actually coming from that gives me the energy to want to love my other brothers and sisters made in God's image, the way that I am being loved by God. And I think that's what makes Christ different than Caesar. Caesar sat on a throne, and actually Nero during that time, I mean, start looking at the history of that dude. That was a wickedly sadistic man, and I don't know how to put it any other way. And that's why the contrast is so different. Like Caesar's on the throne and hugely sadistic, and here's Jesus, this common man. I mean, even a rabbi in that time would have just been one rabbi among thousands. And he was the son of a carpenter, born in a manger. That part of the story is telling us that everyday people have power, even if you're just looking at it as a story and you don't believe he's the Son of God. The emphasis that's put on Christ and who he was and what he came from in his place in history and humanity was he was an everyday Joe that changed the world. Now, granted, that's why I believe he's the Son of God. But I'll stop there.
Hey folks, Craig here, and I'd like to let y'all know we are always looking for writers to contribute to our blog. I don't care if you have any experience or not. 2 or 3 of our contributors had no prior experience writing, and it turns out they have a real knack for it. Our project coordinator helps them put the articles together, and she publishes them on our website and Facebook page, and you will also have the option to come on the show and go more in depth about your article. So if you like what we're doing at The Bad Roman and would like to try your hand at writing, then send us an email at thebadromanpodcast@gmail.com. We're having a blast with this project, and we would love for you to join us in helping promote it. Now back to the show. Well, let me ask you something, and it's something I try to point out a lot with or bring up in these conversations when we're trying to get Christians to understand that the entanglement with the state is contrary to following Christ. And in your article, you said this rabbi began to gather followers around ideas that rejected the dominance hierarchy, the selfish tribal economics, and the violence against one's enemies accepted in the larger society. Now, when we look at that, why do you think that Christians are so ready to follow a man-made government, no matter how flawed they are or how bad they're acting across this world? Is it fear? I mean, to me, there has to be something more behind it than fear. I mean, I think fear drives it, but there's got to be something more behind it, and I can't pinpoint it. And even looking back at my old neocon days, I still can't pinpoint it. There was fear because I did not want a liberal in office because they were going to ruin everything, But looking back, I don't know. There had to be something else driving it other than fear, and I can't pinpoint it. Maybe you can.
Yeah, well, I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I love to read a lot of psychology because the human is the most interesting thing to me on the planet. And what I've learned is that, our first human emotion that we work out of is fear. So I would add on to that, though, of why humans are, I'll just say, people worshipers in the sense where they elevate man above themselves. It's because of fear. And the second part is laziness. And I can honestly say I'm guilty of both that. And, so I'm not trying to point the finger at those who worship the state, although I usually use that term, worship the state. I know that's within me because I voted before, and I just thought, okay, well, this is if I vote for, say, George Bush, I'm going to get less taxes taken out, and I can do better for my family, which I had a young family at the time, and so that was an important decision to me. But if I'm honest, it was because I was fearful that the Democrats would take more of my money, and I would struggle more raising my family. And so there's validity to that. And that's where I have to say about the Jesus story is like he's faced with all these fears and even more, and he still rises above it and conquers those fears and loves his neighbor as himself, like sacrificially. He trusts so much.
I think it is. I think you're right, man. I think you're right. I think it is laziness. Because when you think about it, when we get done voting, when the voting cycle is finished, we just go about our lives and don't really concern it anymore.
Yeah, and also think about the midges of people that are like angry at Trump or praise him. um, because they don't want the responsibility for their own lives to go well. They want to put that on somebody else. So when their life isn't going the way they want, well, Trump's a jackass and he's ruining the whole country, and we can just like blame it all on him. He's our scapegoat. But when he's doing good, it's like, oh, right, I made the right decision by voting for Trump. So my life's going good now, blah, 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 blah. How is it not idolatry? I can't see it any other way. And it's because we don't want that responsibility, which makes us lazy. Like if I want my neighborhood to do better, then I need to get out and maybe mow an old person's lawn that can't get out and do it anymore. You know what I'm saying? I need to take on the responsibilities for myself and my family. And then if I have more to give it to the rest of the world so it can be what I want it to be.
So we're just trying to outsource what we should be doing anyway. We're trying to outsource through a government, man, the government that is evil in its very nature.
Yes.
If you think about how government acts, they steal from us with the threat of a gun. They use that money they steal from us to kill other people. And if you don't comply to them, they will lock you in a cage. There is nothing peaceful about that. And so Christians are trying to outsource how we're supposed to be acting towards our neighbor. We're trying to outsource it to an evil government. These people are evil, man. And I can't stress that enough. Why are we so involved with this as Christians?
I don't know, but to make this program a little bit more controversial, I'll say American Christians are a worse part of the problem, because we don't want the responsibility of taking up our cross and following Christ. We want to put it on the government and scapegoat everybody else.
I mean, look at Trump. The amount of Christians that follow this guy is awful. Some of the stuff he said leading up to his first election was appalling to me. I couldn't believe it. And then there's so many Christians that get on board. Franklin Graham, you said this in our roundtable. I was listening to it again last night, and you said, I can't even call this guy a Christian.
Nope. I loved his dad.
Yeah. Well, see, they're so night and day. It's like Ron Paul and Rand Paul to me.
Yeah.
They're two different people. And because Trump, some of the stuff he said and the way he was treating people, and Christians were cheering this stuff, man. And that's when I started realizing, man, there's something wrong. There is something completely wrong with what's going on. And I started stepping back and taking a look at what was happening. And that's when my mind started changing a little bit. That's one thing I guess I can be thankful for with Donald Trump, is it kind of opened my eyes to some stuff that I would have ignored with anybody else, because I was so hell-bent on making sure that another liberal didn't get in office. They're all the same, man. If you look at how the Republicans are with compared to Democrats, I see very, very little difference. Very little. We're still got mounting debt. Well, I mean, we're going deeper and deeper in debt. We are still expanding these wars, Democrats and Republicans alike. And if Biden happens to beat Trump, which whatever, I don't see any difference. These guys,
Well, Trump surprised me, so anything can happen.
If people think that electing Biden is going to change anything, no. When Obama was elected, he expanded the wars that Bush had started. He increased the war footing. He talked, and Trump has talked about bringing troops home, but when it gets right down to it, he doesn't do it. When everything going on, people are so focused on one thing right now. Man, I don't remember the last time I saw anything, unless you go listen to a podcast, like you listen to the Scott Horton show or something, you might hear something, or Free Man Beyond the Wall, you might hear something that's going on in other countries as far as how we're still acting over there. But you don't hear it on the news anymore. It's all on this coronavirus. And I think a lot of this is being used to distract us. But I don't even know the distraction is needed at this point, because people don't even care. People don't care that we're dropping bombs every day in other countries. It's not affecting us. But think about it, if it was happening here, we would bristle. Americans would bristle and be ready to fight constantly. But we're so disengaged from it because, well, we're worried about when the next restaurant's going to open up, or when I can get my hair cut. We are so arrogant, man.
See, I think about like what you're just talking about. It kind of went back to the laziness. And I can really attribute our culture is kind of the same as, say, the Israelites leaving Egypt, where, they had oppression. They were not treated well. I mean, they were treated way harsher than we are here as American citizens. They were, more forced labor, where we're more of, how do you say, coerced labor, where we got the carrot in front of the horse instead of the whip at the back. But it's a control system, no matter how you look at it. But as soon as they get out of Egypt and there's not that good food around anymore, we're like, man, we were better off in Egypt with all the leeks and all the good food, and we don't want to really sacrifice for the greater good. And as Christians, I see that we're following the same mental patterns that were negative that the scripture testifies about, more than we are the positive patterns. Like, I love listening to the Christ story through the lens of Jordan Peterson, a psychologist, where he had said this about Christ as the story. It's salvation through the individual, not through society. And so that is how we have received salvation to this world, is God became a man, took on suffering himself, and also his fellow man's burden, and did the best he could with it, which was amazing if you read the story, and showed us a way of how to defeat the tyranny in our own lives, which starts in our minds, in my opinion.
Right. And again, I apologize from all over the place, but I think it kind of goes back to the article as well. But you ended the article, it says, the way of Christ is winning, hands down. Loving your neighbor as yourself brings real and lasting peace. It is what makes the world a better place. And I wholeheartedly agree. And one thing that I'm trying to come to grips with, and I think I'm there, is pacifism. It's been explained to me. Abby talks about it a lot. And when I recorded with Bruxy Cavey the other day, we talked about it some too. And it's not something that, when you think about pacifism, or when I thought about it, and a lot of people view it as, we're just kind of just hanging out, not doing anything. We're just trying to be the best we can, which is not true at all. Pacifism, the way they've explained it to me, and then it makes a lot of sense. They're actively working towards peace. You're not just sitting around not doing anything. And then when that was explained to me, I was like, wow, pacifism is actually more proactive than outsourcing to a government.
Yeah, I said Jesus was a complete pacifist, but he was a man of action. He wasn't a man of violent action. And for some reason, especially in our culture is quick on the fight or flight mentality. That's our natural surviving instinct right there. And we're closer to the fight. And I would say that's accurate, because look how new of a nation we are. We're not even 250 years old yet. We're less than that, I believe. So we're young. And so, like, everything that arises to us is a challenge that we got to fight, like physically. But at the same time, we have that model of Christ, where he was definitely a man of action, but he didn't resort to violent means. But we do. And I have to say, I'm kind of with you there with the struggling on pacifism, because I want to be a complete pacifist, to be honest with you. I want to be that guy. But I know where I'm at right now is I do reserve violence for self-defense of myself if that's going to lead to death. That's kind of where I've made up my mind. If I get slapped across the face, hey, I can take it. I can take that. But my wife needs me. So I do have a mindset right now that, I'm here to still be a provider and protector for my family, even though my kids are out of the house right now. I still want to be the best husband and father I can be. And this is a personal conviction. I'll defend myself enough to make sure I can still be those things. However, my heart may change to more of a, say, like Abby thinks, or Jason Mock, two people I very much respect and love their opinions and how they've explained it. I hope my heart grows to that. And as I get older, I could see it doing that, because I'll just be a little mean. The older I get, the kind of less useless I am going to be a provider. And that kind of thing. I'm not probably not going to be a millionaire by the time I die, right? But as long as my wife's secure and can do without me, and then maybe that decision might change a little bit. It's a process. And I just feel like right now I can't be a complete pacifist to say I'll never defend myself. I can say I'm a complete pacifist where I will never aggress against another person. But, I love my kids. And if they're in some kind of danger, I'll do what I can to help them. Like, I will give my life. And I think that's a good model made by Christ as well. The hard part is that Christ loves us all, and I'm not that big. I got families and friends that I can take care of to the best of my ability, but I can't save the world. And I think that's a healthy thing to remember, is that we are not Christ, but we can be exactly what a Christian is, a little Christ. I can imitate that to the best of my ability, and then I have the grace to live in. Until I get to where maybe I will get to a place where I'll just use Abby and Jason as the model of perfection of their hearts in that. Maybe I can get there, but right now I just don't think it's feasible for me.
I think getting older kind of helps with things because honestly, back in my younger days, man, I wouldn't hesitate to slap somebody back on the face when they slap me on the face. You know what I'm saying? And now that I've gotten older, I'm just kind of too old for all that garbage. It hurts too much, and I just kind of want to sit on my couch and watch some TV.
Yeah, I'm 45 now. I'm pretty sure I'm in the middle of a midlife crisis, but I could say 5 years ago, I'd have slapped somebody easy, and maybe not even for hitting me first.
Yeah, without question.
Yes, and just for, I mean, I wouldn't say shits and giggles, but I would say just like if I got irritated to the point by something somebody said, I would probably smack somebody, and and as I reflect on that, I'm not proud of that. I'd rather be who I am now to fight against that instinct because it isn't right. If I'm honest, do I want somebody doing that to me? I don't. I mean, how many times, of us being on this side of anarchism and not being patriots to a flag or a nation anymore, do we have people say, I'd stomp your ass if you stomp my flag?
Oh, I used to be that guy. Golly. This brings back so many neocon memories. I mean, some of my Facebook memories, dude, I see them and I'm thinking, good man, you were so awful. You're so the stuff you used to believe. When you get to you start talking about the flag, and it kind of goes to what I was going to talk about next. But the kingdom of America, the American empire, is going to fall at some point. And people need to understand that. Now, as Christians, we need to remember that that is not our kingdom. Our kingdom is not of this world. Our kingdom is going to stand forever and ever and ever. And we are a part of this fantastic kingdom that God has created, or that Jesus has created. And if we just focused on that, all of this garbage going on with American politics, I don't even concern myself with like debates and stuff anymore. People talk, they watch debates, and I can't do it. It doesn't even interest me anymore. I'd rather watch a cartoon because it's the same. It looks like a cartoon to me. At the end of your article, and you said, so if being a good Christian means being a bad Roman, then by all means, let's be bad Romans. And the meaning, let's follow Christ and let's be bad Romans to government. Let's also make sure that they understand we're a threat to their stability.
And I agree with that 100%. I honestly think when I reflect on the history of the Roman Empire beginning to collapse around Constantine's time, he invites the church in to help him make Rome's empire more moral. In a sense, it was a desperate plea to keep the empire together. And I look at it the same as Satan offering the world systems and the empires of the world to Christ, where Christ rejected power over his fellow man because he knew that's not what makes the world a better place. What makes the world a better place is to love your neighbor as yourself. And that was bringing down the Roman Empire. People were coming to the faith, selling everything they had, building hospitals, rushing in when there was diseases, and helping people. And the economic system could not sustain it. If we lived that way as Christians right now, where we obeyed God rather than man, and actually lived less out of a paper currency economy and an economy out of an ever-flowing source of love and even nature. Like they say the planet produces 3 times the food that everybody on Earth needs. We just can't get it to everybody, or there's systems in place that stop it. We have the resources. We have the clean air. We have the clean water to sustain life, but we hoard it because of fear. And I do think that's the underlying demon, so to speak, is we're so afraid that we're too afraid to love, I guess, is how I would see that. And then Christ comes on the scene. He's like, no, you guys got it backwards and upside down. There's plenty, and be loving and share and give it.
Well, he told us that too. He said, what are you worried about? What are you worried about? And when you read that in scripture, when all this started with coronavirus, man, I kept going back to that scripture, and I kept sharing it. And I was like, and he told us what are you worried about? Does your Father in heaven not think more of you than he does the birds that he's feeding? What are you worried about? Why are you worried about tomorrow? And if we can just rest in that, if we can just rest in that reality that we have a loving Father, that our well-being is his first interest, we need to keep that in mind at all times. And you just want my grandmother to die. No, that's not what I'm saying. I just don't want you to worry about this, because when all this started, people started acting like death was a new thing. People die every day of different things, and if I happen to die from the coronavirus, then it is what it is. But I'm not going to worry about it, because Jesus told me not to. And I'm going to take his word over other people's. I mean, I might call me selfish, but I kind of trust him more than I do a human being.
Well, he was the perfect human. We can't get away from that. I mean, he was the perfect human as much as he is God. And if he had this human experience figured out and perfected, then yeah, he has the credibility for me to listen to. And it's funny you mentioned that, because, Christ said, don't worry about what you're going to eat and what to wear. Look at the sparrows. They're fed and they don't sow and they don't do these things. And that's like a huge statement. But I'm actually taking a class right now, or workshop right now, about coming out of the poverty mindset and realizing that the planet is enough to sustain the life on it. But we live out of that fear where we don't trust, I doubt, if I'm honest, I doubt the words of Christ that he is going to take care of my needs. So I have to get my head straight. I have to sit and live in those promises. My needs are going to be met because God cares about me. And in turn, I need to trust that. And then I need to share that. God has given me plenty. God has taken care of me. I get the chance to imitate him by taking care of my neighbor, or the hard one, even my enemy.
Right. Well said, my friend.
Yeah.
Well said. I'm really looking forward to your next article. This one was great. We got some great feedback on this article. And if you go to the website and read it, there was several people that even hit the like button on it, which is pretty cool, man. I haven't looked recently, but I've got it printed out. But there was like 13 at the time when I printed out, which is, I think, more than anybody else's.
Nice.
No offense to anybody else. I mean, I've got an article too on there that's only got a couple likes, so it really goes right along with what this project's all about and what we're trying to get across to people. So let's end on that. And you have a new Facebook page that I want you to plug on here, and then I'll let you go and get back to your day.
Okay. My Facebook page I'm starting up. I've only got a couple videos on it, but it's called The Mind of Christ. And basically what it's going to be is me just sharing stories and object lessons, short videos of things that's impacted my life and changed my way of thinking. And I hope it does the same for other people. I'm hoping the lessons I've learned, so to speak, can be a blessing to others to either relate to or help push them in a direction towards Christ and faith and responsibility and many other things. It's one of those things I can't even put I have an end goal to, because I think the goals are endless of what Christ can do through us and through our humanity. And there's another thing I wouldn't mind plugging that's not mine, if you don't mind, is that workshop I just kind of brought up. It's called, actually it's a Facebook page you could probably find, called Uprooting from the Poverty Mindset. And what it's doing for me is it's helping me put money in its proper place in my life. I grew up poor and always nervous about where our resources were going to come from. And it's put money in an idolatrous place in my head and heart, where either I'm too overexcited about when I get a lot of it, or I'm very, very scared when I don't have enough of it. But the reality is it's really nothing, and God is meeting every need. That's the way the guy that's been teaching me a bit has said it this way, and I love it. It's like, I'm going to brainwash you back to reality. And what I took from that statement is, through most of my life, I have been brainwashed because the world's fears and understanding of how things work that is separate from God gets put onto you. And in a sense, when you come into your own, and I think we all come into our own kind of at a different spot in life, you have to unlearn things because we've taken on false beliefs. So it's just an important work and self-improvement.
I might need to check that out myself.
Yes, I have to admit it has super blessed me. And the guy who runs it, I can't speak well enough about. Good, tender-hearted guy with a lot of wisdom. So he's one of Keith Giles' friends.
Right on. Well, man, I want to tell you, I really appreciate the work you put into this project and how much you've helped promote it. And I've learned a ton. I've learned a ton from you just in our conversations. We have a lot of times we'll text back and forth or even phone calls, but I've learned a lot just by talking to you, and I really appreciate the work you put into this. And I'm very thankful that God had put us in each other's path.
Me too. And to me, what I love about what you just said is that I see God all through that. And here we're two random guys that's met over Facebook. And I think we've been Facebook friends for a couple years, but it's like we've grew up together, and that I mark as the Spirit of God uniting people for a grand purpose to help shape this world to be more like His image and not what we've tried to create as a race. So it's just more evidence to me that there's a Spirit of God moving in our world and making it better. Like the article talked about, I think it was towards the end, that it is the way of Christ that is making this world a better place through His kingdom than what any kingdom on earth that is trying to mirror that in a sense. Because I think Rome started off with good intentions. They wanted to make sure their citizens were taken well care of, but they lost their way. And I think we're honored and privileged that we have a leader who has never lost his way, and that's Jesus.
Well, I think government's full of well-intentioned people, but it changes once they get entangled with that. And we just need to remember that we have one king. There's no king but Christ, and that's who we follow. And if we just stay on that path, man, I just don't see. I mean, we're gonna experience hardships. I mean, that's just part of life. But at the end, I mean, if we're just following Christ, man, I just don't see how it can go wrong. And I think Christians need to get back to that. Get away from government and let's just follow Christ. No king but Christ. That's our guy.
Yes. And what I really like about that is that here comes this king that's not demanding loyalty. He's just saying, come, follow me. He's not like putting a whip at our back and making us do anything. He's inviting us. And that's why I have to say that makes me stick with Christ. I'm not afraid, that He's going to be mad at me. I'm excited that He believes in me, that I can follow, that I'm good enough to follow. And that's been a real nice revelation for me to learn these last probably 5 or 6 years as I've just been examining life again, re-examining life to see where I fit in. And that's the motivation. I get to partner with the living God to make this planet better. What an amazing, amazing calling. And so my encouragement, I do want to leave with that. Come be a bad Roman. Let's be bad Romans. Let's follow Jesus.
Let's all be bad Romans. Let's follow Christ and not the government. Yes. All right, buddy. Man, this was a lot of fun. Great conversation. And we'll do it again for sure, especially when you get another article written and you're going to be involved in some future roundtables as well. So we've already got one recorded that you're in as well that we haven't released yet, but we'll do it again for sure, man. I always enjoy speaking with you, and I can't wait till the next time.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Bad Roman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcasts to never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, it really helps people find us. 100% of donations are given to local charities in Memphis, Tennessee. To learn more about the Bad Roman Project and to find show notes, please visit thebadroman.com.